We are ready to start.
Ready to go? Welcome to our media availability. It's day 4 of the legislature. We're almost through our first week. And today we had a little bit of debate on Senator Davis's bill. And I thought that it was handled very well. I thought we got to a good point on that bill. It was a good process, and I think it was a good example of a great process. On opening day, I mentioned in my speech that in 2020, there's a special double celebration, and Utah is a big part of that. It's a big part of Utah history, and that's women's right to vote, women's suffrage. And so it'll be the 150th year of the first time, at least that's documented, of a woman voting, and that was first here in the state of Utah. And it also is a celebration of 100 years of women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And every year I have made up a Senate coin that has the Senate logo on it. And this year on the back, instead of having something from Thomas Jefferson or a quote from our Utah Constitution, we have Martha Hughes Cannon. And a quote of Martha Hughes Cannon, and I'll read it to you. It says, "No privileged class." Well, let me tell you, Martha Hughes Cannon was the first a woman state senator in the United States here in Utah. And she says, we have a statue of her out here on the plaza. She said, "No privileged class, either of sex, wealth, or descent, should be allowed to arise or exist. All persons should have a legal right to be the equal of every other." So 1894. She was a great advocate of women and children, created the health department here in the state of Utah, and we want to honor her. So I don't know if our press folks can accept a coin, but I'd like to give you one if you're willing to receive it.
We will use that for, thank you.
Is this good in Vegas?
It might be, I don't know.
We'll find out.
It'll double your.
She was a Democrat, so.
No problem, thank you, sir.
Senator, can you just hold that up?
Yeah.
We'll get a picture of it.
Well, let me take my glasses off.
Okay, yes. All right, thank you.
All right. Yesterday we left with a question with regards to the Trans-Pacific Partnership (TPP) and how it affect the new administration not in favor of TPP, how that's going to affect the coal industry here, especially potentially a coal port. We have our resident expert on coal ports, Senator Adams, who will answer that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll have any impact. I think that's yet to be seen, but I'd like to emphasize a couple of things that I think perhaps we forget. First of all, Utah has probably some of the cleanest coal probably on the planet. And coal is still a fairly significant use or source of energy, and people are using it all over the world. And I guess you could choose to burn dirty coal, or you could choose to burn clean coal. And Utah's coal has a demand because it is clean, and of course, I think in my mind, I'd rather see clean coal being burnt than dirty coal. And we talked about a coal port, I think, last session, and one thing that I think needs to be emphasized is that much of that effort was to try to revitalize the economy in rural Utah. And there was a misconception that we were probably using state funds to help with that effort, but there were no state funds involved. It was actually community impact funds that were generated there by people that extracted minerals out. Would pay the federal government, those monies had come back in. So I'm not sure if it will have any impact directly, but I guess time will tell.
So anybody, all you folks who are watching, we're happy to answer your questions. Please communicate those with us, and if we can't answer them, we'll try and get you an answer the next day. Open up for questions,
I'm
Bob.
wondering if you gentlemen support removing the Zion curtain from state law.
I actually will maybe talk about that for a second or two. You know, Utah has some of the best outcomes from our alcohol laws on the planet. We, again, I've led, I think, the nation. We have one of the lowest DUI rates. We have one of the lowest, I think anyway, one of the lowest rates of alcohol use. And much of that, I think, is maybe because of our social norms here. But we've had alcohol laws that have actually done served us very, very well. And I'm not sure what the outcome will be and what I'm not willing to actually commit on that one way or the other. But what I would like to emphasize is the fact that I think sometimes we talk about issues like that as if they are they're somehow not working. And I think our alcohol laws have served us extremely well. And I just believe that the outcomes we've had and what we've done as a state of Utah, I'm very proud of. And a lot of people try to run from that or try to make it something different, but the same thing, Wyoming has the same laws, we've heard that all before. And what I want is effective legislation that curbs underage drinking and irresponsible drinking in adults, and including drunk driving and other things that cause a lot of harm and alcoholism and inappropriate use of alcohol. So I'm not willing to commit, but I do want to emphasize the fact that I think our laws have served us well.
Any of the other ones, will anybody raise their hand and say they will vote to remove the Zion curtain?
Well, I'm not in favor of removing it
I got a
until,
vote there.
I'm not in favor of removing it until we have something to, not necessarily replace it, but I know that we are some of the best in the country, but alcohol is still a problem in our communities. Underage drinking, DUIs, binge drinking, it's still a problem. And so if we can create better policy in other areas, then maybe I think there's I'm open to a discussion about the Zion's curtain. But let's be clear about the Zion's curtain. Does everybody in the community know what that is? What is the Zion's curtain? It's a separate preparation area. And when it's communicated like that, I think the community also has a different idea about the it has been unaffectionately called the Zion's curtain because of the either real or perceived influence that the LDS Church has on alcohol policy here in the state. But the reality is it's a separate preparation area. And, we don't want to glamorize alcohol. And it's all about, trying to have children not even begin to consume alcohol. It leads to all kinds of ills in our society. So I think there's some openness to discuss that, but there's got to be something substantive to also help us move forward in reducing those three areas, or helping to reduce underage drinking, binge drinking, and DUIs. So there's an effort going forward, and I know there's a lot of folks that feel like there's some changes that can be made, and maybe there is some changes that can be made. And we'll see as those options become available and for the public. And I know a bill is being drafted, and then I think the discussion will begin. So it's just that I get around the country, and I'm with my colleagues legislative colleagues from all over the United States. And we're not as backward as people think about alcohol policy. I was in Virginia recently at a meeting and was with some of my colleagues from another state. They were drinking and wanted to leave the area where we were at, and they couldn't leave that area. And I know that's a big discussion here in Utah too, that portability is, and I know there's a lot of advocates who want to get loosen up the portability of drinks within a hotel or so forth. But Virginia has the same law that we have, and Wyoming has a separate preparation area. And how are we going to? The question is, how are we going to create a demarcation between what a restaurant is and a bar? How are we going to separate that? And maybe the separate preparation area, because of the grandfathering and all those other things, created a real tough situation. And we accept that is a problem, and probably if there's any way we could fix it, it would be really good for us to do that. But we need to make sure that a restaurant stays a restaurant, and if there's a bar, it becomes a bar. And there needs to be that separation. And I think if we can get there, then I think potentially the Zion's curtain issue goes away.
And I would say if we can't, I think the probability goes down. So there's a high probability that nothing may happen. It'll depend on what the options are.
Why does there need to be a separation between the two? Just, I mean, between a bar and a restaurant. I mean, you've got places like Squatters or Uinta or Wasatch, these places that are serve alcohol, or you've got restaurants in other states. I mean, we've probably all been to restaurants in other states that are similar to that serve alcohol, that serve cocktails, that also serve families and shit.
It's environmental.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want restaurants being morphed into bars and all the negatives that go with bars. And so we've got to create some separation there.
Anyone in media or in what can I say, in advertising, understands what you're trying to do with the product. And if you're trying to sell a product or sensationalize it, I'm not worried about the adults. I believe adults can make good decisions. But when you bring children in and you're sensationalizing a product that has challenges to it, that they're restricted from actually using until they're of age, and you're making it look like it's a fun, desirable event, that's a problem to me, okay? And I think it's a problem to a lot of people in Utah. And I think that is something that shouldn't be done. And I think you can't, there's many ways to sell things, and some of it's subliminal, some of it's direct. And the indirect advertising, I think, is as unhealthy as the direct. And I think we have to be careful when we walk into bars, but we walk into restaurants that they don't appear to be bars. It doesn't appear to be an event that kids ought to want to try to be involved in when we've actually made it illegal for them to do.
The practicality.
It's an interesting question, why it was important, because it's been hundreds of years we've separated bars from restaurants.
Restricted
Like
age.
the line today is already blurred to some degree. I mean, especially when you.
And that's part of the difficulty
That's-
we're dealing
Well,
with,
and that's
there's
what I
no
was going to
question.
talk about is the practical application of design curtain as it exists today. You can display the bottles, but you can't take a bottle off a pour.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can have the beer taps, but they can't be hooked up to anything. So
Yeah, good
you
point.
can have the big bar, but you can't actually have a drink on, you know. So I mean, is it actually functioning the way it was
Right.
intended?
So that's the question, is
That
it
is-
functioning? Should you go backwards or forwards? I mean, some of people like to take bottles down, so that's one of the options.
Well, you tried that, and
Yeah.
I think that the Supreme Court
Advertising,
struck it
yeah,
down, right?
Yeah.
Can you define what you mean by sensationalized? Because restaurants, even with the sign curtain, still advertise alcohol on their menus, they still serve alcohol to patrons. in view of children there with their families.
You know,
So-
I'm probably not the expert to talk to, but I can imagine somebody, you know, lighting something on fire and making it look fun. I mean, you guys, I'm not a drinker, so maybe the drinkers can help me know how they're mixed and what's kind of fun about the way they mix them or what happens. I have no idea. But I think the fact that it could be done, I think that's a big deal.
So it's the preparation you think that makes it attractive, not the consuming that children are able to see?
I think it's the messaging that it's appropriate, enjoyable, fun, and it's something that they ought to try. And I think if that is messaged, you know, if that's messaged, I think that's inappropriate for kids.
But for adults, it is appropriate and it is enjoyable fun for those who do, right?
So that's why we have an age restriction on bars and restaurants. For those that want to go to bars and adults, that's surely appropriate. For those kids, I'm not sure it is. And
But
that's-
restaurants though, my question is restaurants do allow the service of alcohol
Sure,
to a table and allow children who are there to see people drink.
sure.
Is that part of what's sensationalizing it in your mind, or is it just that preparation? Because it looks like fun somehow the way they're doing it.
So I guess what I'm hearing is, would you advocate for it being prepared at the table? And is that, I mean, there is a way to sensationalize the way you mix a drink. So I don't know, simply, I don't know.
Well, no, I just wanted to make sure I
So
understood what you
I'm
were
trying to
saying.
ask the opposite
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
is it appropriate to have it mixed at the table?
Well, most
Your
places don't
question-
mix at the table. When we did away with mini bottles, you mix in a bar area.
Yeah.
But the Zion curtain shields diners from seeing that. And the question I had is, if you don't see the preparation but you see people drinking, is that still a concern for you as someone that feels that children are influenced by seeing alcohol?
You know, I'm not sure that's as big a deal, I just don't know, I mean.
Okay, that's what I want.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, right now you have, what is it, Swigs or whatever, that mix up a Diet Coke with a little bit of, flavoring to it. I don't know that's that big a deal, but I do believe the sensationalizing of the liquor is. Okay.
I think the question goes to that not every table is where alcohol is being served. In fact, probably here in Utah, it's going to be, depending on the restaurant, there's going to be a minority of tables where alcohol is served, but there is a lot of other people in the restaurant that are going to see that also, where if at your table that's not happening. So it is, obviously family choices or individuals' choices, and we're not trying to get in that way, and we're not trying to restrict what we have today. But there's an environmental situation for other people in the restaurant.
So the bottom line for me is, again, in Utah, we have 20 people killed every month. This month we'll have 20 people killed on our freeways. I don't, if I ask for a raise of people in this room who know somebody who has a substance abuse problem, whether it be drugs or alcohol, everybody's hand would go up. You've got to know a relative, a friend, or somebody who has one. It's a problem in our society. Probably the most money we spend, both in healthcare and in incarceration, comes from drugs and alcohol. And I think we need to be able to regulate that, and we need to be able to do it in a way that doesn't sensationalize it. And what that is, I hope we're smart enough to figure it out, but until we find a better way, I don't know there's support to change what we've got, because our laws have served us well, okay?
I just know when Speaker Lockhart spoke out, the late Speaker Lockhart spoke out against the Zion curtain and calling it weird, that was what she always raised, was that idea that kids are still seeing alcohol consumed in a restaurant. And so where are you really influencing kids? and she always called it, as I recall, a teachable moment, you know, to reinforce the values of her family, not to drink alcohol when they went to a restaurant and saw the table was with a bottle of wine or something, for example. So
I just-
that's why I asked that question, because people who are concerned about the influence on children, you know, where do you draw that line? And you're saying you don't really want to change what we have now, you just want to make sure that whatever we do going forward doesn't add to that sensational.
Yeah, and I actually like going into a restaurant, not have to be teachable every moment. I actually like going into a restaurant and having an environment that I enjoy being in, okay, with my family, and not have to look over my shoulder as to what's going on next to me. And I think most Utahns would probably agree with that, you know, I don't want a restaurant to be like a bar, okay?
Any other comments from anybody?
On this same vein with the alcohol, one of our viewers wants to know if the Zion Curtain places an undue hardship on businesses because they are required to construct visual barriers from all vantage points in order to prevent people from seeing beverage preparation. Thoughts?
I think there probably is a financial burden on them. I don't think there's much to be argued there.
It's too bad Senator Stevenson isn't here. He usually likes to come to these meetings and would be able to maybe talk a little bit more about what some of the discussion has been. He and Representative Wilson have been talking about potentially some changes to alcohol law, and I think we're going to have a good debate this year about all of these issues that we're talking about today, Zion Curtain included. I think this year, probably with the work that they've been doing and trying to put something together, we will have an opportunity to discuss ways to maybe make some changes, maybe modernize our laws a little bit on alcohol, and it would be great if he could be here. I'm not ready to go into any detail on that, but I can say I think we're going to have a really good debate in the legislature this year in both houses on alcohol policy, and I think that debate is going to move forward. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up. There are a lot of interesting questions and a lot of people that are interested in alcohol policy, but we've kind of looked piecemeal at different parts of alcohol policy for the well, every year it seems like we have some discussion about it, but I think this year we do have an opportunity to have a chance to take an overall look at what our policy is and how it affects business, how it affects individuals, how it protects children, and maybe how we can do all of those things a little bit better. So maybe this question would be better held until Senator Stevenson is here.
I don't want to belabor it, I think that we already have, so.
Bob, thank you.
Somebody's got your back.
I went to a jazz game last month and they, right there, you know, it wasn't being passed to me, it was, but they're drinks poured in the open, right? Completely contrary to what you get in a restaurant. Family environment, obviously, if you go to a baseball game or a soccer game, family environment, drinks being served directly over the little bar area they have there. Why is there an inconsistency? Why do we have this inconsistency between grandfathered restaurants, between jazz games, baseball games, and these new restaurants, or the Eccles Theater that has to have the Zion QB, whatever, you know? It just seems,
And that's the reason why we're even having this discussion, is because there is some, I think there is some unfairness, there isn't the consistency, and I'm hoping we can get to a point where we can create more of that consistency and fairness, and yet maintain, you know, the objectives that we have with alcohol policy in the state.
So
But we're just waiting to see what, you know, a bill will say and how that moves forward, so.
And, you know, I'm unaware that we served hard liquor at ball games. You know, do we, you know, I mean, are there,
but it's the same for a beer, right?
yeah, beer, I mean, we do beers in grocery stores. There's a difference, okay?
Yeah.
And so we're not mixing drinks at a ballgame, so I'm trying to figure that out. And, sitting at the aisle saying, what do you want here, what do you want in it? I haven't seen that
Yeah.
done, and the guy saying, I'll mix it up for you.
But I think if I order a beer at a restaurant, they have to prepare it back in the
They can't.
Take
separate
Yeah.
preparation.
the lid off, yeah. Okay.
All right, let's move on to another issue.
Seems like, since we've solved that one, then.
We have a viewer with
We
a
haven't
separate
solved that.
question, moving on from alcohol.
I'll drink to that.
One of our viewers would like to know if you have any thoughts on Governor Herbert's State of the State last night, specifically in regards to his ideas on potentially removing some taxation exemptions.
Senator Davis, I know you've had
I
some
think on
feelings
the
about
ex-
this.
If the exemption issue and idea is applaudable, it does avoid having to raise taxes to do it if we can find that. Of course, you're raising taxes on somebody. When you're taking exemption off, they then have to pay the tax that they'd normally be liable to do anyway. And I think it's time that we take a good hard look at what we're giving away tax-wise in the state of Utah before we get down to the hard discussion of raising taxes.
Very good, thank you.
That's great.
And we have another question about SB 29. SB 29 would tax people applying for a marriage license $20, and then the couple could be reimbursed at the tax if they take a state mandated marriage prep course. Why should I be taxed for someone else's course? And basically, are there limitations on this? If you're over 70, do you still have to take the course? Does it specify specifically what course you have to take?
Not
Senator May,
saying
would you like to respond to that?
what, I had to laugh a little bit.
But Senator
I
May
mean,
isn't over 70, so.
No, well, yeah, well, but that brings up a good question. I never thought about that in age related. So someone marries at 40 or 50. I'm gonna have to really look at this bill. I'm not there yet. And when you just brought up age, I think that should be in that too. When someone's been married 49 years and they're a widow or a widower and they remarry again, do they have to, I mean, they know the trick. And we have to take them there again. I think that's kind of a nanny state. I would really, just looking at this, I'm not there. And if there's other ways, and I know I know the heart that he has for that. But there's a lot of avenues in marriage, and there's a lot of avenues people have traveled, and I think we need to really look at those.
I think one of the real questions is, we are raising the cost for people to get married, to get a marriage license, only to rebate that increase back to people who do this marriage training. And just, to me, it doesn't make sense to be able to do that.
So what
I
if
think
they-
that's one of those issues that the clergy does very, very well, and it's something that the clergy should be encouraging people to do. I don't think it's necessarily the state's role to go in there and mandate those kind of things for a discount.
What if you get a bad marriage, you get a rebate?
It's another question.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the challenge is our divorce rates are unbelievably high, and children are to be ineffective. I don't know if there's a way to do it, but I applaud any effort to try to help.
The thing is these studies have never really lowered the divorce rates in any state.
Okay, I think we're buttoning up here unless there's some urgent question that we need to discuss. Nothing else, we'll see you all tomorrow at the Senate media availability.